Me ko no da. She got a time and tag, she could joy. Got to con kong yaka, second dabagua, got a man and a metaji, can ya dabaja. Dear Lieutenant Woman, and a coffee, making and Janet walk a janum.
South Sudan has been marred by years of conflict, much of which has been waged over the oil fields in the north of the country.
A week of fighting in South Sudan shows no signs of abating.
Forces loyal to the former vice president have seized the main city of a key oil-producing region.
Amidst the fighting, there have been reports of intermittent health scares linked to deformities and congenital disease. I've received a series of documents, minutes, letters, and medical reports that highlight the high levels of congenital disease in the area. It also unearthed an attempt by officials to suppress the information.
Let me help you that. Just move this. So is this the plane that you use when getting around South Sudan?
Yeah, that's a model of the very aircraft that we were using there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it brings back some memories. I'm working for the German NGO called Sign of Hope. I've been visiting South Sudan since 1997, but when we are talking about the specific oil project, the first trip was in early 2008. Whenever we met the people were complaining about the bitter taste of the water. People were complaining about the salty taste of water. They were saying our cattle are dying, livestock is in danger. So I went there to take some water samples.
Oil was first discovered in Koch County in the 1970s by Chevron Corp. And then, in 1997, a consortium of oil companies from around the world came together and began exploration in the area. In 2006, major production began. And this was just 2 years prior to Stiglitz's tests.
When we saw the first results, we most prominently found salt amounting up to 6 grams per liter. That's quite a lot. We also found high levels of heavy metals, for example, lead being the most prominent and the most harmful of them. The polluted drinking water wells showed the same characteristics as the produced waters.
Produced water is really the key part of Sign of Hope's evidence. It's a toxic brew of heavy metals, hydrocarbons, drilling fluids, and salt brought up alongside every barrel of oil. Best practice in the industry is to dispose of it by injecting it deep underground. The concern here, though, is that produced water has been put into ground-level pits and then seeped into the drinking water supply.
What we did is establish the fact that the oil production is causing contamination of the drinking water. And of course, as an organization, it motivated us to address the ones who are responsible for this mess.
Got a man and a metaji, can ya dabaja? Hey, Mano, one and a corner me, na me, Rude, la garden, and me, yada, man, and them, Chacola, native for. I don't know,
The consortium of oil companies was led by the Malaysian petro giant Petronas, which entered the country in 1997. It's a global energy giant with operations in more than 100 countries. Petronas is known for its sponsorship deal with the Mercedes-Benz Formula One team, and it's this link that Stiglitz used to get Petronas into the same room as him.
They were also saying, okay, we can give you access to this Petronas-led oil consortium. We can try to mediate, we can arrange for meetings.
This issue finally came to a head in 2015 at a meeting in Stuttgart, organized by Mercedes, with Petronas, the South Sudanese government, and Stiglitz's organization.
At this very meeting, we were confronted with a threat that finally made us, as Sign of Hope, leave the country of South Sudan. The representative of the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining said that when you continue to publish your allegations against this Petronas-led oil consortium, we would consider this an act against the government of South Sudan. We have never sent any expert back since.
In a statement, Mercedes did say that it used its influence to bring the parties together in the hopes of a resolution. It's been roughly 10 years since Sign of Hope last set foot in the country. In 2024, Petronas decided to leave the country and abandon its assets, relinquishing them to the government. Since its departure, it's maintained that it operated under South Sudanese laws and regulations and says it always met required standards. This might not just be about historic claims of industrial malfeasance, but current ones. Are there signs of water contamination today? And if so, will Petronas or South Sudan shoulder the responsibility?
It would have been quite easy for them to drill deep water boreholes, but obviously they choose not to do it at large.
Domaton me idea luno na beninin me jade mo chi belu paro de ya lor cerca un ta tinda me qua nyuro ga lor si le le ko ma de ngai ho ya le ko cerca ta re dar bes ramin te mo ye jen cerca sil ngai ko nei ta wande.
This is a place where cattle come and get their water, between 5 and 10 kilometers from the oil site. And the locals and the local administration have told us that in the rainy season, the pits that hold the produced water overflow into areas exactly like this. We're going to come and test it and get a sample and see what it all says later. On to the next one. So to give you a bit of context about this part of South Sudan, it's an area that's been ripped apart by conflict over the years.
During the country's civil war, South Sudan's government carried out a violent military campaign to secure the area for oil extraction, with evidence of indiscriminate targeting of civilians.
Once it stabilized, this came in at 2.04 millisiemens, which is actually quite high. It's a unit, it's a measurement of electrical conductivity within the water. It's just basically a way to quantify how water can conduct electrical currents. And it just shows you if there's any heavy metals inside the water. Very pure drinking water would be below 1, and this was above 2.
It's hard to overstate how important oil is to South Sudan. Roughly 90% of the country's revenues come from oil. And that's the main reason the government is so dependent on foreign oil companies. Petronas promised, and in some cases did deliver, on things like health centers, boreholes for the local community. But when I was there, I noticed the health center just didn't work. The hospital was on its knees, and boreholes were terribly maintained.
The oil companies, they bring you water once a week?
How
Could you just help me understand, after you gave birth to your baby, what happened afterwards?
Medan me yego la na gar me de liune na jongan ma sherka bangalwa ba gada ba nan gwan to gol ba ti kon nganga ba one ne kan ba nan gwan de nan tong dong ba je wo ne dong te me de te ko garu selu na ulin ko wo se wala de wo ka sho ure gada re ya kamra min sil mana af wani mana ta mana me ya di sil mana af ni bel ko na sherka me la ra ban ma da mo fi de te ko mas.
We've just got some water from the nearby ponds where Sarah gets her drinking water from. She purifies it first, filters it, and then drinks it. So we're going to take this back to Kenya and get it tested at a certified organization and find out exactly what's inside. But there's a bit of a story playing out where we see that it's not just a few anecdotes. And so we've come to this hospital to learn more about what professionals think about this issue.
This is the postnatal register books where we register all the mother who give us at this facility. So especially the case of the mother of the child who was born with no limbs.
Here it is, baby passed away.
Yeah. So within the community or here at the facility, we are receiving a lot of deformity cases during delivery.
Is there any way of linking the pollution, the contaminated water to some of these cases?
Yes, there is a link because most of our community, they are not getting clean water. They are drinking from the river. We suspect that these cases are linking to the contaminated water. We also received one case. The child was born without eye. There is no indication of eye, please. So the face is totally flat. That is the only person is still alive. Otherwise, the rest of the cases, after 2 hours, they pass away, or within the time of delivery, they pass away.
I don't know. Now I come with a pan, my yen dear, Bob and Tandy, or whatever to thin my Yakon Tim magazine, whatever was in Yakon. When you pay him, when you pay him, over 50 young, Borakavan, or whatever to thin, why young, I know, tell me you toward it. Take a time, Martin. One can one jar. I really take yet a time, Martin, come here, Naya Duff. Why? And I'm not men and I be pen one man, yet and I can have you one in there. I feel a one. I will not with you, or will like a wine, or what you are wine in I went in a jar and in penny one and a betting and doing jar. But I make all everything one way in. But over there, and they will not. Nang wa ngar kera ga ka ga ba ngar fa la gwi ne kana ta na teje mi de ye be lo ngar tong aba ngar wana jara ala.
At any point during all of this, did you meet anyone from the oil companies? Did they come and visit you?
Ya tera mi me be.
There's a lot of confusion around these issues because obviously the community cannot test to specifically know how linked this is to the oil industry, but they are definitely sure that this did not exist a few decades ago before these guys arrived.
Still, there is no clear scientific evidence that directly connects deformities among children in Koch County with polluted water. A government-backed audit looking into the impact of the oil industry on human health was carried out by companies from Norway, Kenya, and South Sudan in 2022 and 2023. But since then, no results have come out. As journalists, we were given access to Koch County, but on the ground, we noticed the situation was tense. When the central government discovered we had approached the oil facility, they were not happy.
Well, so he's saying we should have told people in Juba if we wanted access to the oil facility.
He said if people could just come back to Juba, that's what he said.
He wants us to come back to Juba.
That's what he said.
So we've just had a call from the authorities in Juba, and they have told us that we shouldn't film anymore, we shouldn't go near the oil facility, and they've ordered us back to Juba, the capital.
In the end, we were stripped of our filming permits and told to stop reporting. Results from the water test showed that there were chemicals in the water consistent with drilling fluids. For example, the test showed that there were high levels of sodium and potassium in the water, which are fully consistent with what produced water should look like. Despite a decade having passed, nothing much has changed on the ground. There's been no public acknowledgement for the responsibility of what's happening in South Sudan. But documents do show that there is an internal and private debate around the matter.
We found a child in the oil production area called Ping. He was born with one leg, very badly deformed. We have evidence here in the form of letters and medical reports that this child was sent to Germany, paid for by the oil companies. And there's a line here in a letter written from the Petroleum Authority that says, there is a high likelihood that these substances contribute to deformities of the embryo in the first 3 months of pregnancy.
In 2024, Petronas decided to abandon its assets following damage to 2 major pipelines. Since then, South Sudan is accusing it of failing to live up to its environmental standards and not paying the local community damages.
Mercedes-Benz has a high reputation in Germany, so we thought that's the key to success for the people in South Sudan. Mercedes-Benz can use their influence on their business partner to perform better. But at the end, these conversations didn't lead to a significant improvement of the situation of the people who are living in the oil fields.
The German company have known about these allegations for years, and yet Petronas is still the main F1 sponsor for the team.
Ka